Hey, world language teachers. It is Wolang Wednesday, and today's class is all about 3 power habits for teachers that will instantly give you energy, which is something that we could all really use right about now. But the best part about this is that I'm going to give you my 3 best habits that give me energy that don't require me to get up any earlier or lose any planning time. So let's jump right into it. This class is really inspired by a time in my life where teaching was the most difficult. It was a time when I had to teach during the most difficult season that I've ever been through in my life. And I think that with a lot of the messages that I've been getting recently and with talking to a lot of you about what's going on in your classroom right now, struggle is the name of the game. So I wanted to talk to you about what I used to help me get through a very, very difficult season of teaching, because maybe it could help bring a little bit of light and joy into a hard season of teaching that you're walking through right now, that everybody's walking through. And what we're going to talk about today are a little bit of health strategies, but mostly it's about how to make teaching easier to face when things in your life are falling apart around you. And this is very much so to help you see that teaching doesn't get easier in a time where it's difficult to teach. It doesn't get easier in a difficult season. There are things that you can do, though, that help you to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more ready to face what you know is going to be waiting for you, which is a lot of faces that are going to be coming in and out of your door, or in your case, maybe in and out of your Zoom room. And these are the habits that during a real dark time for me helped to keep me getting on back up and doing it over and over again, even when it was really tough. So what on earth am I talking about? 2 years ago, something happened in my life, and this class is not going to be about me, so we're not even going to go down that route, because I want you to be able to see in my story, I want you to be able to see yourself. But something happened in my life where I experienced a very difficult loss, the kind of loss that really gutted me, completely gutted me to the bone. And it was the kind of loss where it affected everything about my life. And it also, I started to feel it physically. I started to get migraines, and I had never gotten migraines before. It's not at all a part of my history or anything. So my body responded with migraines because I was not dealing with how difficult this loss was for me in my life. What I did, typical Devin, because I am definitely a workaholic, is I just buried myself in work so that I didn't have to deal with this very difficult loss. It was a really especially difficult loss for me to deal with because it was grief of the kind that is really hard to express to another person, because it wasn't the typical kind of loss. It was where somebody really close to me cut off our relationship in a way that, and broke it in a way that it could never be repaired. And that it was a really difficult loss to face. So going through that and realizing that that relationship was completely over and that there was no hope of repairing it, that kind of grief, that kind of loss, it was really hard to express. And so I just chose not to express it. And it came out in a very unhealthy way. And I still have migraines to this day and being treated for them and all those things. But I have a very rigid self-care routine because of it. And to get through that time and that immediate time of the year when I had to go back to teaching with a very, very fragile emotional self and a very damaged physical self, I had the type of migraines where I had severe light sensitivity, meaning that I could not be in the type of lighting that a classroom is with all of the fluorescent lights and all those things. So I was out of the classroom for about 4 weeks. It was rough. I was in a lot of pain. And the only reason that I could go back, the only reason I went back was because I ran out of days. That was the only reason, because I was not well enough to go back. So, and it was about in March 2 years ago. So I had 3 months, I was staring down 3 months of teaching in a classroom that I loved. Man, I loved my students and I loved that school and I loved that job. But it was so hard to get up and go to school every day, knowing that I had this big thing in my personal life that I really needed to deal with and face, but was afraid to. And on the other side of that, I had this deep physical pain that I'd never experienced before and that I had to start to get used to as being a part of my everyday life. And how could I teach under these circumstances? How could I be okay with the fact that I'm no longer a good teacher now because I can't really even process things the same way? You know, I have a lot of limitations in how I'm able to communicate with my students and what we can do in class now because of how much pain I'm in. Do you see what I mean? Where like you can probably see a little bit of yourself in my story here, in that maybe you have migraines and maybe you know what this feels like. But what I really think that you can get out of this too is that I think you know what it feels like to completely have your hands tied by outside circumstances where you no longer feel like you can be a good teacher for reasons completely outside of your control. So this is what I did for a long time to help me get through each of those very difficult days. And it took me a long time to get there. Trust me, it took me a long time to get there. But these are the 3 power habits that helped make that very difficult season, because it was a 1.5 years of teaching. It did get better as I started to get used to it and I started to heal and I started going to therapy and working through everything that I needed and found a medication that worked for me for my migraines now. But it was a long road. It was a long road. And these are the 3 things that really made each day a little bit easier for me, just because I was getting a little bit stronger. But going into my classroom, ever since that moment when I got my first migraine, it was a battle. It honestly was. It was a battle. I would sit before my door and I would think, am I really ready to do this? Am I really ready to open this door and let all these kids that I love be... And this is what I really thought to myself at first before I knew how to check it, was, am I ready to let them be disappointed by what I can't do today? Am I ready for that? That was really hard. That was really hard. So what I did to try and make that easier for me, and what I think that you might be able to take something away from, was every morning when that thought started to come of, my kids are going to be disappointed today because I can't be the teacher that I want to be. And I think that you might be feeling this way too, if you're watching this, because a lot of people requested to come to this class. That's a thought. I don't have any control over that. I don't have any control over the limitations that I'm currently under. You're teaching in a time of COVID. I was teaching in a time of, I had some physical limitations where I couldn't teach the way I wanted to. But what can I do? Can I give my absolute full teaching self in the ways that I can? And that's what I did, is I told myself I am not, when I stood by my doorway and was afraid to go in every day, for a lot of different reasons, I told myself, I'm going to give my kids the absolute best that I can with what I have, with what I am able to give them. And I'm going to let the rest of it go. I'm going to let the rest of it go, because I don't have control over that. And what I don't have control over, I can't change. And it made a huge difference. So this is my number 1 power habit for you, is be very grounded in why you do what you do. I had this little mantra when I started to get smart about how much that negative self-talk was affecting me. And the next year when I went back to the classroom, many of you know the stories, that after that end of the year was very hard for me, and I quit. And I quit my job, even though I loved teaching. I went back, found a different job that I thought would be a little bit of a better fit for what I was working with in terms of the limitations of what I could do in a classroom and how I was able to approach the day. So I got smart about how I talked to myself and how I prepared each day. And I wrote down in a journal every morning before I even set foot on campus. Because once I set foot on campus, that was where the trouble really started for me. So my first habit was that I really knew what I stood for and what was important to me, and I stayed really grounded in it. That's my first power habit for you, is stay grounded in who you are and what you stand for, because your worst enemy is really yourself and how you talk to yourself about your circumstances. So if you're going through a difficult season of teaching, you might talk to yourself the way that I used to before I went to the doorway every day. I would say things in a previous time of, am I ready to let my kids be disappointed every day by how I'm not able to teach them? And so when that thought came, I would acknowledge, this is a thought. I don't have control over that, but I do have control over this. I'm a great teacher. I love my kids, and the reason that I love teaching is because I love my kids. So I'm going to do the absolute best that I can for them with exactly what I got. And that changed everything. That changed everything for me. It made every day a lot easier for me. Even when days were hard, it made facing them a lot easier. Because I made it a lot less about myself and my own feelings of like, I don't feel like I can be a good teacher today because I have a migraine and I'm in a lot of pain, or I'm going through this really difficult thing and I don't really know how to manage that with what's going on in my job. I don't know how to do that. And that's okay. But what I did do, and what really helped me with that, was staying grounded in why I did what I did. I taught because I loved kids, and because everything that I did in that classroom was to help benefit the lives of the kids that were on my roster. And so when it became about the kids and instead of about me and how I felt, it made facing the days a lot easier, even in times when I was a little bit limited, or I had to change things because of the way I was feeling that day or things that I was facing. So here's what you can do with that too, is if you're in a situation especially where your hands are really tied, or you have a lot of work on you right now, or you're in a very difficult season of teaching for even just more than what's going on in the world right now, you're going to have thoughts that run through your head along the lines of, this isn't fair. Can't do this. I have no control over this. When is this going to get better? You can't control those thoughts. They're going to happen no matter what. But what you can control is the next thought. And the next thought needs to be something that you are really grounded in. Write it down. Do it every morning if you can, because it's really powerful. Why are you there? How are you going to help somebody today? What are you in control of? What are you in control of? Doesn't cost you any kind of sleep or planning time. It makes a huge difference. Being anchored in your why and being really grounded in why you do what you do is going to change everything about how you approach difficult days. The next thing that I did that is related to that, but is a lot easier to do, is I started a gratitude practice. I had heard about how gratitude had been very helpful for other people, and it is very scientifically based and yada, 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 all those things. That's all true. But what really changed for me is gratitude started to shift my practice from me thinking all the time about what was hard about my life and what was painful about that experience. Things like, why is this happening to me? Why is this so painful? I don't know if I can keep going for as many days as I have to. And doing that teacher habit of just like counting down the days until summer, you're like, I can just survive one more day. I can just survive one more day. I can just survive one more day. I started writing down things that I was grateful for so that I could appreciate what was going really well for me. And so it would be things like, I would write down every morning, especially when it really started to work, I'm so grateful for my medicine. Because I remember very vividly the days when, and those of you who have migraines, like you know what this whole shuffle looks like. But there were 2 months when I saw 6 different neurologists. We were trying to figure out what was going on with me. And you have to kind of figure out a medicine that like works with your body chemistry and all those things. And I had this thing called an intractable migraine. So I had a constant migraine for 2 months. For 2 months. A very, very sharp and painful one. And now it just kind of like comes in ebbs and flows. But for 2 months, I was under constant pain. Constant. So when the medicine started to work, what I started writing down in my gratitude journal was, I'm so grateful that I have medicine now. And that made the pain instantly lessen. It really did. I could feel my shoulders relaxing when I wrote it down. That's how powerful it is. It's just the thought of there are so many people in the world who are probably having the same problem as me, but they're still trying to figure out what will work for them. Or maybe they don't have access to this kind of medicine like I do. I just feel so lucky, so blessed, so privileged that I have access to this powerful medicine. So that's just and I wrote down lots of other things too, because the more I wrote down, the better I felt. And I share that with you just so that you see a very real, concrete example of the power that your mind has over the circumstances that you are in. And that is not at all to change the circumstance that you are in. It is still hard, it is still painful, it is still serious, and it's still a thing, obviously. Like nothing that you tell yourself is going to change that. But what it does do with the gratitude practice is it helps reframe your center and your focus on what is so sharp and so negative about that experience to all. It helps round it out a little bit. It kind of helps dull it a little bit. That's the power of a gratitude practice. And it also helps you realize all of the other amazing things that were in your life. The other part of that gratitude practice that it really unlocked for me was my need to ask for help. So if you are in a difficult teaching season that is compounded with what you are already facing in your classroom, then you are probably needing a lot more help than you're asking for. And so writing down what I was grateful for every day, as well as who I was so grateful for, showed me how much I needed to ask my husband and my immediate family for help during this whole whirlwind of a thing. And how much he helped me, and how much my mom helped me, and how much my sisters helped me during this whole time. It was incredible. And how grateful I was for all of their impact in my life and how much they supported me. And so knowing how grateful I was for them, it made it easier for me to ask them for help without feeling all the weird things that we feel about asking for help, even though we shouldn't. That's the really powerful part about that tip number 2, gratitude. And that doesn't take any extra time out of your day. I mean, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes, but you'll get an immediate sense of just a little bit of relief. And I think sometimes that gratitude gets a little bit of a bad rap for being like a pseudo journal practice. But it's much more powerful than that. It really is, if you let it have the gravity that it really could have, the impact that it could have on your life. And the last one is I got real serious about my water intake. Real serious. Tip number 3 is drink water. Drink water, because water is the number one thing in your life. Well, I should combine that with sleep too. But water and getting enough sleep are the number one things in your life that balance your emotions and give you the emotional strength that you need to face whatever you are facing. So it's the idea of, if somebody told you that there was this miracle elixir that would give you extra years of your life, fill you with energy, instantly enlighten your perspective, give you clear thinking, and make it easier for you to see everything in your life as it really truly is, that's really what water is, and having enough water actually is. And it's not as hard of a thing as we make it out to be. It's just being more intentional about what we do and how we do it. And I think that this needs to be brought up specifically for teachers, because in the teaching community, I know for a long time I didn't drink enough water because, hello, where are the pee breaks? Please. So tip number 3 for instant energy and a better way to approach a very difficult teaching season for you is to drink enough water, simply for the scientific fact that it will, and like Google it. I'm certainly not a health expert, but like I did a lot of research on this. Googly goog the things, and you will find that water is really beneficial to emotional regulation and making sure that everything is balanced before you go in and face everything that you got waiting for you in your classroom every day. But drinking enough water is really hard for teachers for that exact reason of like, well, we don't have breaks, so what are you talking about? But this is what I would do, is I would front load my water in the morning during my like morning planning times, and I would chug water at lunch, and I would drink a lot of water before I left work so that I could get that like one last pee break before I would leave work. And then I would have, you know, the 4 hours you have with like between home and bed and all that good stuff, I would drink water then. So I carried with me this 48-ounce super Nalgene that I love with all my heart and I still use all the time, even though I'm not in the classroom anymore. And it was my goal to finish that by the time I was done the day. So that was my simple way to measure it. And you can get all kinds of different things like that. Like you could bring 2 Nalgenes, or Nalgene's just my fave because I'm an outdoorsy kind of person, and Nalgene's the only way to go if you're an outdoor person. But with water, the way that you can do it as a teacher is bring in a container that is about the size that you can consume during the day while managing your bladder potty breaks that you get during the day, which if you're like me was 2. So you do have to manage, like when you're drinking a lot of water, you are going to have to pee a lot. So if you space it out depending on your schedule, like it'll seem weird when you talk to other health people in the industry, because they'll tell you, you know, you need to space out your water intake throughout the day. But like teachers, you can't do that, right? That's not a thing. So find times in your day where you can chug a lot of water, and then 30 minutes later, you'll have a free time to go to the bathroom and you'll be all right. That's what I used to do, is I used to plan when I would drink a lot of water, and then I would not drink water during class so that I didn't have to go or had that really uncomfortable bladder feeling while I was with kids. That's how I did it. Drink half of my water during the day, and then half of my water at night. Or I guess it was a third. I think I would drink 2/3 of my water at school and then a third of my water at home. And a really easy way to figure out, well, how much water do I actually need, is that it's not 8 glasses, 8 ounces. That's actually not necessarily equivalent for each person. What you can do is take your body weight in pounds and divide it by 2. And that's how many ounces you need. So I drink 70 ounces of water every day because I'm 140 pounds. So 70 ounces is main. And that's a little bit over 8 glasses actually. So I drink a little bit more than that. Ooh. I still have 30 for today. This class is all about simple ways that helped to keep me mentally sharp in a time where that was the one thing that I was hoping for above all else. When I had the worst, most difficult season of my life, and I had to go to work and be ready to do things every day and like be on it every day. That was really hard. That was a very difficult teaching season, and it was really, really sharp and intense for about 3 months, and it started to become a little bit of an easier road for about a year, and then COVID happened, and it kind of started all over. So these habits got me through all of that. And these are the things that I did to help keep me grounded during those really difficult seasons. I drank a ton of water, ton of water. I practiced gratitude every day when I was going to work. I would sometimes take a break on the weekend, but I practiced gratitude in terms of just writing down things that I was grateful for, and very, very specific things in my life that I was grateful for. Not general, very, very specific things. And I would often repeat them from day to day. That was really helpful for me too. It might not be for you. Do your own thing. But the most important thing really was that I stayed very, very much so anchored in my why. Why I did what I did every day. Why I got up every day. And why I chose teaching. And stay true to it. Especially because you're gonna have lots of thoughts that run through your head that you have no control over, and there's no reason to beat yourself up about it. Because the way you feel is the way you feel. But the way you react is what you have control over. You have control of so little right now, but you do have control over a small piece of how you react. And that will help, I hope, not to make teaching easier, because it won't right now. Teaching will be hard in a hard season. It is, and it doesn't get any easier. But what will happen, especially with maybe some of these habits and maybe some others that you've picked up along the way, is that it will help make the days easier to face, because they will make you stronger. They'll make you stronger. They will make your mind clearer. And they will bring you a little bit of light and a little bit of joy. Thanks so much for being here with me. I really hope that this helped you. And thanks for letting me share my story with you. Go get some water, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.